Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Several people killed and others injured after an explosion ripped through a bar in the luxury alpine ski resort town of Crans, Montana. In a first, 34-year-old New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani takes his oath on a centuries-old Quran. He now becomes the first Muslim, first South Asian and first African-born person to hold that position. The United States has carried out strikes against 3 vessels in international waters that were suspected of narco-trafficking. According to the U.S. Southern Command, the vessels were traveling as a convoy. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the withdrawal of National Guard troops from Portland, Chicago and Los Angeles, hints at a stronger comeback in the future. Russia President Vladimir Putin voiced his confidence on victory in Ukraine, while his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky warned that peace cannot come at any cost. Ex-world champion boxer Anthony Joshua has been released from hospital in Lagos in Nigeria after being treated for injuries sustained in a car crash that killed 2 others. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te vows to defend the democratic island sovereignty in a New Year's speech after China carried out military drills. Lai said he will steadfastly defend national sovereignty in a televised address from the presidential office. Elon Musk's brain implant company Neuralink will start high-volume production of brain-computer interface devices and move to an entirely automated surgical procedure in 2026, as per a social media post. Alright viewers, let's start the bulletin with some news now coming in from Israel, which is to revoke the licenses of 37 international NGOs operating in Gaza and the West Bank. Affected organizations include ActionAid, International Rescue Committee, Doctors Without Borders and Norwegian Refugee Council. The license suspensions will take effect on January 1 with operations to end within 60 days. Israel said the NGOs failed to provide complete personal details of their staff and violated new registration rules. 10 countries including the UK, France and Canada condemned the move, saying it will impact humanitarian aid. UN officials warn that the suspensions could block life-saving assistance in Gaza, where NGOs run hospitals and essential services. Israel maintains that humanitarian aid will continue through approved channels and that most of the affected NGOs contributed only a small percentage of total aid. And I welcome Colonel Sanjeet Sirohi, who is an international relations and defense expert, and he joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for joining me in this discussion, and a very happy New Year greeting to you. Colonel, do you think Israel has the right to block these NGOs and the aid that they are distributing in Gaza and West Bank? And are its reasons valid enough to block that aid?
Firstly, Happy New Year, Kriti. And secondly, I am very thankful to you for inviting me on your channel and discussing something very, very important.
It's a pleasure.
So as regards the Israelis' decision to suspend the license of these 37 or 38 organizations which were providing humanitarian aid in Gaza, I think it is a step which is going to affect, although Israelis are saying that nothing is going to get affected, because as per the Israel report, they say that the aid which is coming from these 37, 38 organizations is only 1%. But whatever it is, the situation which is already bad in Gaza, and if you stop the aids coming, humanitarian aid coming from any organization, I definitely feel that it is going to affect. How much will be effect, that will be seen later on. But I think Israel is always taking such decisions which is creating problem for the people who are living in Gaza. 90 to 94% of the population is living under shelter and with inhumanitarian conditions. And if, in spite of that, if the Israelis they stop this aid in whatever way they want to stop it, then I think it is very, very bad for the people in Gaza, especially during winters when there are floods also. So I think this is a wrong decision.
Yeah.
And the new regulation which they are talking about, because if you see from the other's point of view, if you give the name and the background of the person who are working as the humanitarian workers, then it jeopardizes it compromise their security. And Israelis are already 500 and plus aid workers have been killed in Gaza since October 23. So I think it is a wrong decision. And the countries which are condemning it is absolutely correct. And Israel always take decision on their own. If they are occupying their territory, if they are occupying Gaza, then it is their moral responsibility to look after the people who are there in Gaza. So I think it is a very, very wrong decision as far as I am concerned.
What are the reasons that it has given in the first place to ban? And do you think those are plausible enough to go ahead with such a sanction? And also we all know that concerns and condemnations have come in from the United Nations. But why is no enough action taken to stop Israel from taking this hegemonic unilateral decision?
Priti, the point is who's going to take that decision? As far as Israel is concerned, they are not bothered about UN, whatever UN is talking about. For last 2 years, you have been talking about genocide which is taking place in Gaza. International Court of Justice, also the cases have gone of genocide against Israelis, especially against the Israel Prime Minister. But nobody is taking any action because everyone knows that Israel has got full support of the Americans. And you know that it is Americans who are running the show in Gaza or in Israel. So I don't think there is any other country which has that much of leverage with Israel where they can say, okay, stop this on this and do what is absolutely correct. So I think this is not going to stop because what we have seen is for last 2 years, whatever Israel decides to do, they do it. And nobody stops them. Kirti.
But the question is also that Hamas has also not disarmed itself as was required for it to do and to proceed with the Gaza ceasefire. What needs to be done in that context, because it's also not fulfilled the criteria for the first phase of ceasefire, and our talks are already being held over the question of international stabilization force there. It is also for Gaza to disarm, for Israel to move in the same direction.
Look, Kriti, the point is that it is not whether you are disarming Hamas or you are disarming Hezbollah. These are the terrorist organizations. Tomorrow, if you even disarm them, then what is the guarantee that the other third terrorist organization will not crop up?
Yeah.
So it is not the organization it is the mindset of the people. Until that mindset is staged, you cannot disarm. Even if you disarm them, firstly, the question is who is going to disarm them? Israel has tried their best, but still they have not been able to do it. Now there is a ceasefire. Now the international stabilization force, once it goes there, I don't think they will also be able to disarm them because they say that this arms what we are having are our self-defense. So it is very, very difficult. And even if you disarm Hamas, I am telling you, you may disarm them for 4 years, 5 years, but after that what? So until that mindset of the people in Gaza or Palestinians, until you look after the Palestinians and you talk about two-state solution, things are not going to work out. Now the Israelis are not even talking about two states; they are talking about only Greater Israel.
Yeah.
So I don't think this problem can be solved in such a simple way.
All right, but Israel had also said that it required these NGOs to get themselves registered. Then why have these aid organizations not fulfilled that criteria for Israel? What is stopping them from getting registered?
I'll tell you what is stopping them, because work, because the Israeli feel that the Hamas has infiltrated the organization, all these humanitarian organizations which are working there. That is their point of view. But point of view is Norwegian Refugee Council, China Law has said that if you give the names and the other details which are required for the new regulation, now those details, when it comes to Israeli army, there are chances that these workers who are working, the Israeli army will get after them and they are going to be shot. So the point is, it is compromising on the security of the working for the humanitarian organization. So the point of view of both the Israelis as well as the Norwegian Refugee Council, they are, both of them are right. But only thing is that they have to talk to each other, and maybe there has to be some mechanism has to be find out where even the details which are required for these things are not diverse to anybody, and those people who are working on humanitarian ground in Gaza, their security is also looked after by Israelis, because they are the occupying force. The security of anyone who is in Gaza is the responsibility of Israelis till international stabilization force reaches there and start functioning there. Really.
All right, thank you, Colonel Sirohi, but do continue to stay on with me as we proceed. Now, viewers, let's also tell you that Iran has seen a fourth straight day of protests as unrest over the cost of living continues to spread. Security forces reportedly stopped protesters from entering a local government building in the southern Fars province. A female protest leader was also arrested during the incident. The protests began last Sunday among shopkeepers in Tehran after the Iranian rial slumped to record lows against the US dollar. By Tuesday, demonstrations expanded to several universities in the capital and later to other cities across the country. Reports say that the rial has lost nearly half its value this year, and it is now trading at around 1.4 million to the US dollar. This is fueling sharp price rises in Iran and deepening economic pressure on households. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has appealed for national unity as authorities confirmed at least one paramilitary officer was killed during the unrest in the western province of Lorestan. In fact, in an unusual move, the government has offered to open a dialogue with protest leaders, though it has not explained how such talks would actually work. And I request Colonel Sirohi to join me back in the discussion here. Colonel Sirohi, you know, this is my question to you, that this is the first time that Iran has actually opened for a dialogue, the government. Earlier, such protests have only been met with force. This is the first time that they've offered for talks, but no such mechanism has been established whether these, or a format that can tell that these talks can be held in a good dialogue.
Yeah. The problem is that if you have just mentioned that the previous protests were met with strong force from the Iranian regime and the Iranian government, but this time they are soft on these people, because the simple reason is that the government also knows that the people who are protesting, they are protesting for the right cause. And the right cause is that the cost of living has gone high. The inflation is 50%. Their currency has gone down 50% down as compared to US dollar. So even the government there, even the president has said last week that he is not able to find out how to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So the government is on the defense. They have to be on the defensive side, because all these protests, even the government realizes that whatever people are talking about or whatever people are protesting about is absolutely legitimate and it is absolutely correct. The people are facing this problem, and they normally, the consumer, they go on the street, but this time the shopkeepers are going on the street. So it simply indicates that things are quite bad there in Iran. And the problem is that it is not going to stop here only. Now the students have also joined. And if we see the last few months, whatever is happening around us, the students, when they join the protest, then it is very, very difficult to control their protest. And if the government also realizes this, that if they use force against the students, then it is not going to stop. It is going to, in fact, inflate. It is going to increase. So I think that is why the government is very, very particular. This time they are not going to use the force. This time they are going to talk with whosoever the leader, but the mechanism has not been found out, because they don't know who is the leader who is leading the protest. So until the person who is leading the protest and they know whom to contact to, things are going to be out of control. Now it is not only the inflation also. You see, once the things they start rolling in the down slope, then the other things will also come up. There is an energy crisis in this thing. The dams are half empty. So the energy which is hydroelectric power which are given to these cities, this has also been reduced. There is a water crisis in Iran. So there are a lot of problems that are coming into Iran. And in addition to that, there are external factors. Now the external factors, the United Nations sanctions have already been implemented by the European countries in September 2025. The Americans have also put the sanctions. So there
Yeah.
are both external as well as
Yeah.
internal factors.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Thank you for your comment, Colonel Sirohi. I also would now like to invite Mitali Nikore, who is an economist from New Delhi, in this discussion here. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Nikore, for joining me in this discussion. Now, as Colonel Sirohi was saying, there's also the effect of external factors in the Iran protests, and more specifically about the sanctions that were imposed by the US following, there was a stalemate in the nuclear talks. How do you think that can be, addressed? Is the US going to give any reprieve given the situation is only deteriorating now, or will Iran do anything to appease the US? Because from what we know, it is almost already readied with its nuclear arsenal, and it's only a matter of time that such an announcement could be made now.
No, absolutely. Thank you for bringing me to this discussion. I think these protests, which are currently going on in Iran, they follow the pattern of the Gen Z protests that we've seen in a number of emerging economies and developing countries through 2025. And one can say that this is the latest one. And the biggest driver for these protests has actually been the changes in the exchange rate of the Iranian rial to the US dollar, which all stands at almost 1.4 million
Yeah.
rial to the USD. So at this point, I do think that negotiations should be underway, and back channel talks are already underway. And I don't think that we will reach that point of a head to head sort of a confrontation between the US, Iran, and I do think that there will be Saudi Arabian influence also in terms of negotiating those and brokering those back channel talks.
And it's not just the US. You also know that European Union has also taken some similar measures on Iran as far as the question of sanctions is concerned. Iran now has only a very few backers, really. How is it going to come up, get itself out of this situation?
I think the first thing that Iran really needs to do is to figure out what is happening on the domestic front, before even speaking about the foreign relations and before speaking about, which country is really there to support. Because if you look at it, even India, Russia, and China are actually big buyers of Iranian oil.
Yeah.
And this relationship, of course, is brokered through the economics of it rather than any kind of foreign policy. The foreign policy follows the economics. And therefore it is very critical for these countries also, if they are to trade with Iran or to continue relations with Iran, the domestic situation in Iran has to be managed. So at this point in time, the priority for the government and for the army, and military facilities in Iran is to really fix the domestic situation, and that cannot be fixed by simply adopting an authoritarian narrative and stance, but rather with the Gen Zs, it's always about listening. It's always about understanding and understanding the issue of the public. So even if there is no democracy in Iran, one can still see a regime which should be sympathetic to the economic issues of the people.
Would you say a regime change is, in sight? Because the government, of course, has not been able to quell these protests or even address the problems of the economy. In fact, I also want to take that question with Colonel Sirohi. So any of you could choose to go first. I believe you're there on air. Please go ahead, Ms. Nikore.
I think, a regime change, even if it happens, it will not signal an actual change in power. It may be that the face of the regime may change,
Hmm.
but the center of power in Iran always lies with the clergy.
Hmm.
So at this point in time, it is therefore more of a humanitarian approach that needs to come in, within the clergy, where there is an understanding that just repression is not going to work with this round of protests, with this set of protests, and there has to be, some change in the way the clergy interacts with the common people.
All right. Well, thanks then, Ms. Nikori, for staying your opinion. I requested to stay on as we proceed ahead. Viewers, let's also give you some news now from Bulgaria, which has become the 21st country to switch to the euro as it entered the new year, a milestone met with both cheers and fears. Nearly 20 years after the Balkan nation joined the European Union, Bulgaria has abandoned the lev used since the late 1800s as euro coins were projected onto the central bank building. The successive governments of Bulgaria, with the population of around 6.4 to 6.7 million, have backed euro adoption to lift the European Union's poorest economy and strengthen Western ties to counter the Russian influence. And I request Ms. Nagori to join me back in this discussion here. What would you say? How prepared is Bulgaria to meet and sustain the Maastricht criteria, particularly on inflation and fiscal discipline?
No, so I think, Bulgaria has actually been undertaking this preparation for quite a while now. And what we find is that, the Bulgarian economy has actually been improving. There has been a very, very clear, growth trajectory. There's been a wage increase. We also see that they have been managing inflation, which now stands at just 3.7%. The fiscal debt to GDP ratio has been brought down to 25%, which is amongst the lowest in the Eurozone itself and well below the 60% Maastricht criteria. So I think at this point in time, Bulgaria really has been undertaking this preparation for nearly 2 years, and definitely much more prepared to enter the Eurozone.
All right, so economy might be on the rise, but the question of political turmoil continues to remain, right? There are issues of governance and corruption that have been reported in Bulgaria. How ready do you think is Bulgaria really to make this transition to the euro?
No, definitely. See, in Bulgaria, like in any other Euro zone country, there has been a lot of discussion about whether to join the euro or not. What does it mean for the independence of Bulgaria's monetary policy? But this decision has actually been taken by successive governments, because Bulgaria has actually had 7 national elections in the last 4 years, and it is likely that there'll be another national election in the next 6 months, because the government is not that not that stable even at this point.
Yeah.
But people are supporting this change. People are supporting this move towards the euro, because this helps with trade, this helps with business linkages, and this helps the Bulgarians sort of peg their national monetary policy to a greater euro zone monetary policy.
And what are the risks of losing independent monitoring, monetary policy for a converging economy?
So very simply, this is not very different from many of the other emerging economies that have joined the eurozone. See, think about it. Bulgaria's per capita income stands at about 24,000 euros, whereas the EU average is more than one third of this. I mean, it's about 35,000 euros. So there's a huge gap between the Bulgarian economy and the Europe average. The Bulgarian economy is the poorest member of the eurozone economies, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that is the major issue, right? That you lose out a major pillar of the economy to actually prop up growth. But it is hoped that with increased trade and with increased movement between businesses, this growth will actually come from the fiscal side and from the trade side.
Would you also say that it can take lessons from Croatia and Slovakia that recently joined?
But I think that the lessons actually don't come that much from Croatia and Slovakia, because I think the fiscal situation in Bulgaria is much
Different,
better.
yeah.
But actually, it comes more from the point of view of diversification of industry, because Bulgaria is still very much, within that Soviet zone of, industry growth driving the overall growth. It's mostly, first level industries which are still driving the GDP growth. So therefore, there is a real need for Europe investment, tech investment, and innovation to come into Bulgaria. And it is hoped that with the linkage to the Eurozone, that comes in.
All right, sure. Thanks then very much, Mr. Kore, and again, a very happy new year to you. And moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that China has accused Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te of spreading falsehoods after his New Year address, vowing to defend the island's sovereignty. Beijing said the speech misrepresented realities across the Taiwan Strait and deliberately stoked hostility, accusing Lai of undermining stability and escalating tensions. The comments came just days after China conducted large-scale military drills around Taiwan, moves Beijing describes as warnings against what it calls separatist activity. Taiwan's leadership has maintained that the island is a democratic entity and must be free to decide its own future, a position that China, however, rejects. Beijing considers Taiwan part of its territory and has not ruled out the use of force to achieve unification, keeping cross-strait relations under sharp international watch. Now moving ahead, France is planning to ban children under 15 from social media and prohibit mobile phones in high schools from September this year. The move comes amid growing concern over the impact of online harm and screen use on minors. President Emmanuel Macron has repeatedly linked social media to violence and mental health issues among young people. Now, his government is expected to submit draft legislation for legal review early January. Mobile phones are already banned in French primary and middle schools, and the new plan would extend that ban to high schools now. France has also passed a law in 2023 that required parental consent for under 15s to join social media through enforcement has been difficult. Macron has said he wants similar restrictions across the European Union, and public support for a ban remains strong according to opinion polls. Alright, and that's all we have time for. Thanks for staying tuned to NewsX World for all international news and updates.